down has brought a big question, and that question is about air littoral. Now that's becoming the big buzzword. What exactly is air littoral? Who exactly manages it? What's the airspace control that we're really talking about?
It's like this that, the air littoral is a term, it's a new term, which basically comes from the word maritime littoral. Where in the maritime littoral you have the shore and the sea and the coast, wherein the ability of the susceptibility to influence, or control either the sea from the land or control the land from the sea is what is a maritime littoral. Now, when you extend this to what you just asked me, is what is an air littoral? Well, the air that is in proximity to the land, the proximal domain, it could extend to any dimension, but the proximal domain to surface operations is what is an air littoral. Now, if you look at the nature of war, it's constant, but the character of war has changed. And what has happened is that if you see Op Sindoor, in what way has this character changed? The air threat has changed. And so this new dimension of drones, loiter ammunitions, EW intensive environments, counter drone equipment. I mean, if you just take a square kilometer in space, you would have possibly 50 drones of ours, 50 of the adversary. You had about 25 counter-UAS systems to bring down those drones. You would have about 25 EW systems, electronic warfare systems. So this particular proximal domain has got complicated. And now you look at this, that if you use drones to saturate radars and then use a high-speed missile, you've got slow-speed drones. That's the hybrid threat. If this manifests the way it can, you've got a new threat which is going to throw up a lot of challenges, where you finally exhaust your ammunition over saturation rates while the sneak through of the missile gets through. So the whole proximal domain has undergone a change, wherein the rules of engagement are going to change. The situational awareness has to improve. The sensor today, the whole concept of this proximal domain is how do you identify the drone? How do you detect him? What are the sensors that you require? And today the sensors that we had during Op Sindoor, which were in very few numbers, they were medium level radars and long range radars. The ability to pick up the small drone and to be able to engage that small drone is where the challenge lies. And this entire spectrum of aerial threat manifests in the proximal domain. Now, whether you want to call it the proximal domain as an air littoral of a certain dimension, that's a matter of how do you want to put it across. But this proximal domain requires to be taken care of. It needs to have a detection ability. It needs to have an identification ability. It needs to have proper command and control networks, which the ISCCS and the Akash Tir between the Indian Air Force and the Army we have brought together. But it has to move out into a separate domain into the tactical battle area. And I think that is very important. And the ability, when you have so many flying objects, so many, you're going to choke bandwidths. And I think that's where the challenge lies. So if you want to have the ability to, engage effectively, you've got to be able to have distributed networks, decentralized operational ability. This capability has to go down to the div commanders and the brigade commanders. So I think that's where the whole concept of air littoral or proximal domain to the surface force operations has changed dramatically.
I want to ask you this, just a bit of a follow-up, General Dushyant, from General Dukuna, with regards to how did you actually manage this? The part that you talk about, you have a swarm of drones. These are low-cost drones. It does not really cost the Pakistanis much. It just exhausts our radars. Then we basically bring in the aspect of our, the ability to target, be it the S-400 or various others, Akash Tir being one classic example of the usage. How do you really manage it? Because at the end of it, one drop from the drones would have been the biggest difficulty for the Army Air Defense to control. How do you really do that? How do you really control that?
So I think the entire challenge lies in training, and as a drone, carries a greater payload, the speed variance and the altitude variance changes. So I think that the ability in training to be able to pick up this drone when it's flying. So you also have the ability with the visual ability to see this drone, and I think that's very important that a drone with a payload has a greater ability to be detected, because he's got a bigger dimension because he's carrying a payload, so he'll have a bigger engine. So he's easier to pick up. So I think that's how the rules of engagement change, that when you see a bigger drone, you know there's a possibility that he might be carrying a payload. And that's why engage him first. And hence the rules of engagement change as you look at capability. So saturation rates are meant to distract you from what is actually carrying the payload. And I think that difference is where training comes in, because that's not what radars can detect. Radars just show you a picture. You've got to be able to differentiate in that picture what is going to actually cause damage to you, and bring down fire, effective fire, in as short a time frame as possible on that aerial threat.
General Dushyant, this brings us to the aspect of grey zone warfare, and perhaps that's the biggest threat, that's the biggest incoming threat that India faces at this point in time. I want to ask you, during Operation Sindoor, you've had some classic moments by the Pakistanis, and the very fact that there was an attempt made by the Pakistanis to send out a particular message. And in fact, I think so we do have a copy of it. We'll try and play that out. We'll show that. I don't know which was that. When was this? This was during the operation that you got the message?
Yeah, it's during the operation.
Give us a sense, because that perhaps tells us the grey zone area that we're talking about. What really happened and what were they targeting?
Okay, first of all, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity to talk on this very important topic called grey zone. The next thing, before I actually go on to grey zone per se, I'll briefly add on to what General Dakuna has said in a simpler language, so that you all understand what is air littoral and what are the difference and what are the challenges for airspace control in this air littorals. First of all, gallantry awards to all of you who are sitting here till now about quarter to 6, and so my compliments to each one of you. Thank you very much for having listened to us for so long. Another 15-20 minutes and we'll be done with it. As far as air littorals are concerned, in terms of simple language, it is that the tactical battle area has other weapon systems. When I talk of tactical battle area, I am talking of army forces. In case of India, we are already in the tactical battle area. That's the major difference. If you see along the line of control, moment the war is joined, what happened this time? Moment the war joined, we had strikes coming on the people who are deployed along the LC. So therefore, they have to defend themselves. And what are these strikes coming from? There are strikes coming from either the artillery or drones. So you have to actually deal with the drones. So you can't have a control over this by another agency. So therefore, there is this debate going on as to how much of a control has to be there of the land forces, how much of the air forces. So this particular issue is being sorted out. So this is the reason why we are talking about the air littorals. The heights have increased. The drones can come from very high distances. They are not seen by the radars, but visually, like you said, they can be seen. So therefore, we can actually identify and probably engage them in a much better manner. So these are the issues which are there. So that's about the air littoral. Coming down to the grey zone. Look, grey zone has changed everything. You must have seen in the first slide, which GOC 11 Corps gave, Chandpurya, that there are 110 conflicts. The chief mentioned 52 conflicts. I have mentioned somewhere 31 conflicts. Why these differences? These differences are coming because of grey zone. Do you think the conflict between India and Pakistan has stopped? No, sir. 1947 onwards till today, we are in conflict with India, with Pakistan. So therefore, our conflict is going on. It is either sometimes kinetic and sometimes non-kinetic. That is the actual impact of grey zone warfare. It is continuing the conflict into domains because of its, I would say, deniability, because of its unpredictability, because of the fact that you cannot pinpoint who is the adversary, who is doing this to you. So there are many factors in grey zone warfare. Russia-Ukraine war, it's not from the last 3.5 years. It is from 2014 onwards. Grey zone war is taking place in that place. So when the Operation Sindoor started off, I'll give you 2-3 quick examples so that you all understand. There was a YouTube program which was going on, Formidable Pakistan Air Force. This was a short YouTube video which went on during the, I think, 7th or the 8th May night. By the time this program finished in Pakistan, the viewership was about 900 people. That's all. I woke up in the morning and I saw it was around 10,000 and multiple platforms. By the evening, 50 million. 50 million views. What does it make? It actually takes this particular video across to other frontiers, international arena. In fact, you found this video playing very, very fast in the US, because in the US there is TikTok, so TikTok picked it up. We don't have a TikTok in the US. So our narrative was not even going there. You'll be surprised to see the kind of comments which we were getting on our YouTube, which we do with 2-3 of our friends together, about what was actually being played out in the US. I will request if you have those, if you have it, fine. Otherwise, okay. This is the listeners' feedback of YouTube program or the TikTok programs which were going on in the US. Look at the narratives which were going on. There was no one to counter it. No one. India was already on the back foot on the first day, as far as international narratives go. And people make their views from these kind of videos. These are all 2.5, 3 and 30 seconds, 1 minute videos, that kind of a thing. So what the feedback that fellow gave to us, look, he's also giving us a solution also. Go to the next one. India can't fight this narrative war from Indian soil alone. I think there is a big message here. When we ban a TikTok, either we are virtually present there or we use our diaspora by funding, by budgeting, whatever you want to do. This is the age of Krishna. V.S. Sutankar actually described Krishna as he is a cynic who preaches high morality and stoops down to the lowest tricks in the trade. And then he goes on to add that he made a man who had never said a lie tell a lie only once in his life. This is the era which we are fighting, and if you look at this, he suggests, give the narrative to Gen Z, we will fight your war. I think there is a big message for us in this particular, these 2 slides which I am showing you all, that in the next time round, we need to do a lot of things as far as grey zone war is concerned. Attacking the mind is very important, not only within India, but outside India. So therefore, message to all the leading channels. I know you all are having your the world channels, etc. But I think we need to go beyond that. We need to go in the digital era. I'll tell you what is the, and this is the second one. This was a direct tweet to me. This is a direct tweet to me in which he says, General, I mean, he addresses me, it's an ISI handle, you can make it, this handle is gone now. General, initially we were not aware what was happening. Kudos to our media which actually swept the narrative. Kudos to our planning where we actually orchestrated the Op Sindoor narrative war initially quite well. But look at his second tweet. In the thread which is mentioned next to the first one, he says, now the narrative has changed. Even Imran Khan is actually endorsing that the army is now being recognized as a better or in control of things in Pakistan, and it's only the army which can control Pakistan. And finally, he gives a message for the future. You think IWT is, you've done a great job with IWT? The blood will flow in the water, and what else he has said, I think I can't read here, but there will be a religious war within your country. This is if you read the language properly, it's a typically ISI handle which has responded to a particular thing. So what it is happening is that they are not only monitoring the big channels, they are also monitoring people who are in places of authority who can do something to change the mindset of the people. So my take is that in the next round, we should be focusing more and more on information war, on the cognitive domain, hitting the mind of various people, dividing your categories. You have to hit the Pak military also. You have to hit the Pak people also. You have to hit a number of targets in this particular, war of cognitive war or attacking the mind, etc. is concerned. I'll give you one last example of what happened in Pakistan. There was a narrative which was set in Pakistan after the Operation Sindoor, and it was glorious in peace, victorious in war. And I want to add today to this, is equal to makes you a field marshal. Okay, this was the narrative which was played in across the board in the country before he was made the field marshal. So what I'm saying is, half truths can become full truth, and full truth can give you victory, which may not be actually a victory, but it has become a victory for Pakistan. We need to work on two areas. One is our outside narrative. Two is our international reach has to increase. I'm sorry, I'm pointing out here that we also found that either the briefings were not going regularly to them. Our international diplomats, etc., they should have come out more vociferously on the international media. I think that was something which I feel next time round we should be doing something about it. Thank you.
Well, in terms of narrative, I'll come back to it, General Dushyant, but I want to just bring back the focus a little bit, General Dekuna, with regards to the air littoral. Reason being that air littoral dominance, Nagorno-Karabakh being one such example, Russia, Ukraine being the other, it basically demands a multi-domain integration. Brings back to the question, who really manages this? And is there still a fight that is still going on as to who exactly takes control of it?
No, I think that what Operation Sindoor has taught us, that although it was not conflict in its entirety, what we realize is that different stages and phases of battle, the control of the TBA, which is the primacy, lies with the Army Air Defense. In that battle space, you have to have flexibility to operate the way you want to. And we understand that in the initial days of the battle, the Air Force may not be predominantly in the TBA, and the dronal threat would be much higher. So the integration of both the Army and the Air Force is, we're very working towards this as to how we got to synchronize this ability in this proximal domain or the air littoral. To what heights should this tactical battle space, provide the flexibility to the ground force operations to be able to succeed, because it is not possible to handle such a huge amount of air threat coming in simultaneously. It is not humanly. You have to have systems which are networked. You have to have systems which are decentralized. You got to have systems which are automated. You got to have AI controlled systems, because otherwise we're going to result into fratricide. And the final story of this lies that the ability for ground forces to have the freedom of maneuver while simultaneously having the air power to have the freedom of action in the air. The combination of these two will provide the national objective the way we want to see it, and see national security come up the way we want it.
If I have to ask you from your experience, because those very nights, what we saw was not one particular area, it was spread across. At the same time, you had multiple drones coming in from various areas, not just to a single area to be targeted. The fact of the matter is that it brings out a huge gap. It brings out the fact that perhaps they have tried their best to try out as much as we can as far as our systems are concerned. What's that big lesson that we have learned from Operation Sindoor, particularly when it comes to the air defense?
I think that we realize that an extremely sound situational awareness, which the Air Force and the Army put out in the form of the ISCCS and the Akash Tir picture, the ability to have a tremendous plethora of ground-based air defense weapon systems. starting from different type of guns to shoulder-fired missiles. So having a very layered and tiered air defense to be able to, take on threats of different caliber of air threats. I think that's a very important lesson that we learned. And the way ahead is jointness. The way ahead is synergy. The way ahead is in the TBA to give flexibility to the man on ground in not a restrictive, but in an enabling environment. After all, when any life is under threat, he must be provided the freedom of action to operate in the earliest time frame. And this will only be possible when the sensor to shooter link, the kill chain is as short as possible. And that's what we realized.
General Dushyant, this brings us to the fact that, the lost narrative that we spoke about Operation Sindoor, we were squeamish about the fact that we managed to carry out, as I've been saying, one of the finest military operations. We have carried out the fact that these were terror bases that were being targeted. What was being targeted on the other side? It was civilian areas. But could we really pass on that message that, look here, all that the Pakistanis were able to propagate was that they were basically trying to target our military installations, but the fact of the matter is that General Dikuna would say that we've repelled all those, but yet that message did not go. There is a lost narrative that seems to have come into the picture.
See, I don't think there was a lost narrative as such. You see, we were fully aware, I think, before we went in for this operation, that we were targeting the terrorist camps. We had an objective. What did they have as an objective? They had as an objective to kill terrorists. Where are the terrorists in India? So therefore, they straight away, we knew, like Deputy Chief Strat said, that we had war gamed it as to first order effect, second order effect. So we knew that the response is going to come onto the military. And since the military is co-located in certain areas with the civilians, civilian casualties will take place. Yes, we, I think, did not focus to the extent that we should have focused on the civilian casualties which we were having, although we did do it. But I think at the broader level, we continued to focus more on the fact that tactical issues. We should have gone in for issues which actually ring bell with the international environment. Civilian casualties, targeting of people while medical emergencies, etc. Still the Pakistanis were firing onto our area, especially Punch, religious places. We did that, but not to the extent we should have done it. I think that needed more.
What's the pattern that you saw? What's the pattern that the generals here in India saw in terms of coming in from Pakistan, particularly this time during Operation Sindoor and post-Operation Sindoor?
Okay, I think from the Pakistani perspective, there were 2-3 things which were happening. Pakistan was clearly picking up issues wherever there was information blanks. For example, about the aircraft damages. I think they played it quite well across Pakistan as also across the world. What we did not do was that we didn't ask the questions, how many you lost? I think that was something which we should have done, a counter narrative, an offensive narrative rather than a defensive narrative.
What did they lose?
How much did they lose? Right? All of you are aware, this has been said many number of times. Air Chief has also said about it. 10 to 13 is the approximation which has been made, and out of which some we have concrete proof of. So therefore, I think that narrative slightly came a little late, and if it had come a little earlier, around the same time, I think we would have gained more traction. The Pakistanis would have been put under a certain amount of pressure from the media perspective, from the information warfare perspective, because those guys actually snatched that opportunity from us. Essentially continuing to play, even if they were guffawing. Their defense minister was saying that, I would thank that lady who said that, what proof do you have? And he said the social media is abuzz about it, that there are about 5 or 6 aircrafts which have been downed. So therefore, I think at that point in time, we should have gone a little offensive. We should have taken the offensive narrative. That's one thing which I feel, one mistake probably we made there.
General Dikuna, in terms of the Pakistani tactics, during an Operation Sindoor and post that, what is it that you all have identified in terms of the change in the measure that they were doing? Because Operation Sindoor initial days, a debilitating effect that we saw. But then there was a change. The change was in terms of usage of drones, low-cost drones that were being. What's the larger picture that emerges?
So I think that what emerged is that while air defense protection to the TBA is something that we focused at tremendously, but we realized that our population centers and our centers of faith could also be targets in the future. And I think this is something that this realization has made us re-look at, how do we look at protecting our population centers, especially in close proximity to the IB or the LC, and what resource should we allocate, what sensors should we allocate to be able to protect these centers of faith or population centers, because they would have a huge cascading effect on morale, as a nation. So this is something that, and I think this is something we are seized with, and this is something that our Prime Minister has articulated very clearly when he's spoken of Sudarshan Chakra. If you see the terms of reference that we're now working towards, is looking at how, besides protecting, vital installations in the country, important vulnerable areas and vulnerable points, how do we protect our population centers, centers of faith? I think that's very important. And I think Sudarshan Chakra is going to look at a huge capability enhancement within the three services in the maritime domain to ensure that you take care of our population centers as well. So I think that's a very important factor that has been taken away.
I find this very interesting because you said that religious institutions were being targeted, and the fact that Golden Temple being one such. It's a fascinating story, the way you've actually carried that out. But I want to ask you, were there other areas which were difficult to manage in terms of religious institutions or areas for us? And how challenging was it at that point in time?
It's amazing to know that the way we all rallied as a country, I think that is phenomenal, irrespective of religion. You have our ex-servicemen who were prepared to re-enroll and come back to fight. I think that talks phenomenally of our patriotism, and it was across religions, it was across people. They were concerned, and they were concerned with the ferocity of the drones, especially for those living in the close proximity or where the dronal threat manifested. And it was very heartening for commanders on ground. You got General Chandpuria here. You had these ex-servicemen, volunteering on their own. And, we realize this huge capability that we have. And also we are developing an app possibly today where you can use mobile phones to be able to generate dronal information as a sensor to everything else. I think we've got to have this capability infusion. And if the civil population, which we realized was so patriotic towards national security, national cause, it was a wonderful feeling. So why don't we use the capability of an Android phone with an app, like you have in the Ukraine, the Ukrainian app? Why can't we do it and generate the same kind of input from multiple sensors and fuse this together? I think this is hugely a lesson that we also, another takeaway from this particular operation.
General Dushyant, one final question that I want to take from you is with regards to the fact that we spoke about lost narrative and we couldn't capitalize on various aspects of Operation Sindoor itself. Who exactly is responsible for it? Because I'll ask you this, because we seem to have been stuck upon the fact that how many aircrafts were downed. No, that was the bigger question
I get what
that they wanted to.
I get what you're hinting at. You see, in this environment of information domain, there are some structural gaps, and there are some cultural gaps, and there are some issues where we need more coordination. The first thing which I find here is that the higher level, we do not have a singular point of narrative building or information operations. In my view, I think at the NSC level, there should be something, National Security Council level, there should be a body which is actually driving the strategic narrative, right? Now, that can be a deputy NSA Stratcom or whatever way you want to call it, name is not important, but everything has to flow from that point, right? That is one. The second thing is that the tri-services level, where I found that there is a need for the CDS to actually have that capability of driving the information domain. So we had this time EDGPI, we have the Air Force Media Cell, we have the Navy Media Cell. I think there is a need for a tri-service Stratcom immediately. Because the second round, when it takes place, we are not rightly sure. So these are the two big things as far as structural initiatives are concerned, and all this will only come when we start fighting through our integrated theatre commands. Unless we have that integration within us, we will have problems in the air littorals, we will have problems in the narrative building, we will have problems at the strategic level. You see, when we talk of jointness, I've been in the US for quite some time, 2 years I've spent there. When you bring in jointness, what happens? You forget your uniforms. You are a single cadre. You have equal stakes in it, and everybody fights as one man. HR is very important. Let me tell you. Unless and until your minds are joined, integration will not happen. HR integration is the first step to jointness and integration. Unfortunately, that is not happening.
I thought HR was only for us.
No, sorry. HR is meant for everyone. You see, within a team you will do well. But if there are two teams brought together, there will always be, there will be always a kind of a dissension, or somebody would be cribbing against the other. I don't say that in a joint organization there will not be cribbing within, but it will be much lesser. Everybody would be working towards one objective. The turf is something which can only be broken. I am doing this particular effort right from the time when Admiral Arun Prakash was the Chairman Chief of Staff Committee. He had ordered a study. The study was guided by me under General Raj Shukla was my student at that point in time. He did a fantastic study. We presented it to the Combined Commanders Conference personally. But we got some responses which I don't want to share here. There has been a resistance, and it's 25 years to my study. That has been a bedrock. Almost 26 to 27 years from the Subramaniam study. How long are we going to drag our feet? I think we should not wait out for the US experience to play out like they took 50 years or 60 years to get integrated. I think we should learn from the history and experience and transform ourselves. There is a need for disruption in our structures as far as higher organization is concerned. Today, if we don't do that, tomorrow again our narrative or everything will have some missing link or losing some opportunities.
The last word to you, General Dikuna. Operation Sindoor and Operation Sindoor Part 2, as many would say. Your vision in terms of air defense, your vision from the learnings that we've had from, say, for example, Israel, with the kind of unmanned air surveillance systems that they brought in. What's your take here, your vision, and if at all there's an Operation Sindoor 2, what really happens with the air defense?
Well, I really don't hope there's going to be an Operation Sindoor 2, because I'm sure that Pakistan has learnt its lesson the way we wanted to drive it home. And we've also called out their nuclear bluff. So I don't hope there's an Op Sindoor. But assuming that you do a certain amount of prism gazing, I think the challenge to the air defense as a whole would be in two domains in times to come. And the first domain is the dronal threat. That's at the one part of the spectrum. And at the other part of the spectrum is hypersonics. And this is going to be the huge challenge. Between these two, between the drone threat and the hypersonic, the cruise missile threat, you will have to have a spectrum of air defense capability developed. It will have to be, and it doesn't come at a cheap cost, but unless you have this complete spectrum, you will not be able to provide the amount of air defense that is required to ensure that our national security objectives are met. Now, who has them, in what quantum, that is discussion point. But the capability has to be developed. And it has to be indigenous. There is no doubt about it, because and if you look at indigenous capability, it's going to take time. But if I'm supposed to do prism gazing, this is what I would look at in its entirety. And I hope there's no Op Sindoor 2. And I'm sure Pakistan doesn't want an Op Sindoor 2.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh, Lieutenant General Sumer Ivan Dikuna, for your deep, insightful perspectives. And I would like to now request our Editor-in-Chief, Arnav Goswami, to please come on the stage and felicitate our team.